Assalamu alaikum everyone. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As-salatu wa-salamu ala Rasulil Kareem wa ala alihi sahbihi ajma'in. Welcome to our Zakat Masterclass with National Zakat Foundation. I want to thank you all for taking time over this the weekend, or this long weekend, and joining us and learning about Zakat. I am Zaid Mirza, the Program Director here at National Zakat Foundation. My co-host with us today is Brother Asif. Brother Asif, if you want to do a quick intro of yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm the head of community development here at National Zakat Foundation.
So Asif and I will be sort of taking you through our masterclass along with our scholar, Sheikh Abdullah Misra, who will be joining very, very shortly. Before we go sort of get into it, National Zakat Foundation, who most of you I am sure are very well aware, we are a national organization based out of Canada, a registered charity doing the work of zakat from coast to coast. We started back in 2013, and over the last 11 or so years, alhamdulillah, we have made an impact on the lives of thousands of people in over 235 cities and towns across the nation, distributing nearly $20 million to those who are in need. Now, our work is quite involved with respect to the distribution of zakat, but for us, everything starts with the education of zakat, and that's why we are here today. We have a lot of educational resources on our website, nzfcanada.com. So if there are people looking for additional information after the webinar, all of that can be provided there. And we will be sharing all of these links with you all by email to everyone who registered, as well as in the chat today. So just some sort of housekeeping rules. We have a smaller group today, inshallah. So if you have any questions that come up as we get started and as we're in the middle of the session, please use the Q&A section to place your questions in there. And what we'll do, inshallah, what we'll attempt to do is stop every 5 to 10 minutes. We'll take a pause, look at the questions, answer them, and then move on with the rest of the presentation, inshallah. If you have any other questions that are not necessarily related to zakat, or if you want to have any concerns, you can also use the chat feature to have a conversation amongst yourselves or with myself or Brother Asif here, inshallah, and we will be keeping an eye on the chat as we go along. The microphone is muted for all of our attendees, so please use the chat function to communicate with us, inshallah. So in today's Zakat Masterclass, it will be led by Sheikh Abdullah Misra. Sheikh Abdullah Misra embraced Islam back in 2001. While at the University of Toronto, from where he completed a Bachelor of Business Administration. He then studied the Arabic language and Islamic studies in Yemen, as well as in Darul Uloom in Trinidad, West Indies. And then from there, he went on to complete his BA in Islamic Studies and an authorization in 6 authentic books of Hadith, and completed 1 year of specialized training in issuing Islamic legal verdicts. Fatawas. He is a religious counselor with Canadian Muslim Counseling and an independent instructor and a scholar in the Islamic sciences. He resides here in Ontario, and we are very, very fortunate and blessed to have him with us today to lead this session with us at National Zakat Foundation. With that, I will hand it over to Sheikh Abdullah Misra. Sheikh Abdullah, assalamu alaikum.
Abdullah, you're on mute. Your mic is muted.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
How are you, Brother Zaid and Brother Asif?
Alhamdulillah, good. I just a quick housekeeping. I am monitoring for those who are in the session. I am monitoring the question and answers, the Q&A, and these questions I'll queue them up at the appropriate time for us to kind of tackle. So as they're queuing up, they will be answered, inshallah, and we'll be monitoring. Some of them might have a typed answer in the chat, but I think most of them will try and answer live. And I'll Abdullah, I'm going to interrupt you whenever the appropriate time to go ahead and take some of these questions, inshallah, as we're going along.
Yes, please. I really prefer that. As I'm in the presentation, if you have any question or thought, just blurt it out. Don't be afraid. Don't be worried. Just ask it, and we'll stop. And I'd rather that we have an understanding that's flowing. So shall we get started? Inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds great. Bismillah.
Go ahead. You can share your screen. Bismillah.
Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Bismillah. Ya Rab. Ya Rabbi lakal hamd. Where is it? Ya Allah. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you guys doing, my participants? Brother Abdullah, Brother Ijaz, um, Brother Alpha, Brother Imran, Brother Muhammad Hanif. Is it brother or Shaun? And Brother Sayyid and others, mashallah, and Sister Yusra and others. Thank you so much for joining me. Alhamdulillah, I am really happy here to talk about this amazing pillar. It is a neglected pillar of Islam, right? So I'm sure you learned to pray perhaps since you were young. If you're born Muslim, maybe you went to Sunday school, maybe just the environment around you, you learned to pray. And fasting, you also know the basics of fasting. When you go for Hajj, you hire a company or you go with a scholar or you read up a book on Hajj. The funny thing is, we, if we are working adults, then we have probably been liable to pay zakat for years or even up to decades now. And yet, when I realize most of us have never even taken even a half an hour to 1 hour class on the fard pillar of zakat. And the zakat is just as important as Hajj and just as important as Salah. We don't realize that. You see, it's a pillar. When a building has pillars, it means that pillar is keeping the roof up. And when you take out one of the pillars, the building gets shaky. When you lose too many pillars, the building can collapse. Right now, I feel as an ummah, and I'm going to be very honest here, we don't have a problem with Hajj and Umrah. If you go there, for those who can afford, the place is packed, mashallah. And with fasting, I don't find that we, alhamdulillah, have a problem. I found that even people who don't pray, many of them fast, right? But the area where we have this deficiency is in our zakat. And I'm not saying this to make us feel bad. No, the only reason I'm saying this is because this is the one pillar that involves other people. This is the one pillar of Islam that if we don't do, someone somewhere goes hungry for that night. Someone's children don't have warmth in their homes. And so the idea of zakat is one of the pillars, actually the only pillar that goes beyond ourselves. No wonder Allah made it a pillar. You know, no wonder Allah made it something that was so significant. That my prayer, that between me and Allah is going to be the first thing for the day of judgment, and some money, and zakat payments are not much, right? Out of every $40, you get $1, so 2.5%. I'm going to talk about now what is the reality of zakat, and what are the basic rules of it, and there's some misconceptions as well. And we're going to take up questions from you all and discuss what this means. So thank you guys as well for shouting out and returning my salams. As I said, if I'm in the presentation, I can't see it. My brother Asif will just bring your question to my attention, inshallah. So let's get started, shall we? The basis of zakat and who gets zakat is the ayah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنما الصدقات للفقراء والمساكين والعاملين عليها والمؤلفة قلوبهم وفي الرقاب والغارمين وفي سبيل الله وابن السبيل فريضة من الله والله عليم حكيم. Sorry, I'm reciting by fasting voice. Allah says in the Quran, in Surah Tawbah, okay, which is a surah, I mean, an interesting name of the surah to put the ayah of zakat. Perhaps because we have to go back to Allah and share more of our wealth with other people, with the poor people. Allah says, innama, innama sadaqat. The sadaqat are only for this category of people. Now, the sadaqat here does not refer to any and every charity, actually. If you can, you know how we say zakat is, there's many different types of charity, but zakat is the charity. This is where Allah says, "Innama sadaqat." What Allah is referring to zakat. The charities are for whom? Only Allah says, "Innama." He starts the ayah with "innama." Innama. It is only for these people. In other words, anybody other than these next few categories that we are going to mention, they cannot receive zakat. They're who? The zakat is only for the fuqara, those who are completely destitute, those who don't even have enough to eat or drink for a day. And masakin, those who can eat and drink for the day, but they're still needy, they're still income insecure. And those who have been employed to collect the zakat, right? And those who to attract the heart of those who have been inclined to Islam, and to free the captives, and for those in debt, and those who are fighting in the way of Allah, and the wayfarer, for that person who's traveling and cut off from their money. This is a duty imposed by Allah, and Allah is the all-knowing and all-wise. So we know about the fuqara and masaki, that the people who don't even have food for the day, they really deserve zakat. Allah starts with those people. But Allah also mentions the masakin, the poor. Why didn't Allah just say people who are poor? Because you often may think that someone who has food for the day, but maybe they don't have heat in their home. Maybe they don't have food for 3 or 4 days. Maybe they have another expense that they cannot afford and they're legally poor. So notice Allah uses 2 types of poor people, so that we know that it's not just if you're starving. We have to uplift everyone who's underneath the Islamic poverty line, or even the poverty line in general. We have to uplift everyone under the poverty line, right? Whether they're absolutely destitute or whether they're really income insecure. And then Allah says, and the people who work for the zakat, they're employed to collect zakat funds. Why? Because it's interesting. Allah mentions that third out of all the categories. Because you would think someone who's working in zakat, why do they need it? Well, here's what they used to do. The people used to collect zakat not by organizations like we do now. They used to have a khalifa. And the khalifa would send their representative, the amil, around to people's houses. And this person would go, start at the beginning of the street, knock on the door, and say, Assalamu alaikum, I'm here to collect zakat. Okay. He says, I'm here and I want to know how many camels do you have? I have this many camels. How many sheep? This many. And he would say, okay, I'll take this calculation. And the Prophet ﷺ told him, do not take the best of people's wealth. Take the middle. Don't take the best camel. Don't take the best sheep. If you have 40 sheep, give me 1 sheep. I'll take a middle type of sheep. So it's easy on you. And so he would take this and he would take gold coins in heavy sacks, and he would, and it's not a tax. This is ibadah. This is not tax. It's important to realize that we can never see zakat as a tax. And for Brother Zaid, this is going to be one of those misconceptions that we should add to our list, and Brother Asif too, that zakat is not a tax. A tax is something that taxes you. It's something that is actually in Islam, it's unjust to take a tax. A zakat comes from the word zakah. It comes from the word to purify, right? Tazkiyah to nafs, to purify your heart, to purify your soul. And zakah means to grow. Because when you give zakah, it grows your wealth. It makes no sense how that happens. But have you ever seen those very, very wealthy, mashallah, business people, and they give their zakat and their wealth just keeps growing in unexplainable ways? I've never heard of anybody who pays zakat whose wealth starts to decrease as a result. Subhanallah. It's an amazing calculus. But it's not the calculus of kufr. It's the calculus of iman. And if you give charity, your wealth does not decrease. It grows in barakah. So if somebody gives $5 out of 100, the non-Muslim, the kafir way of thinking, I'm saying in a sense of no iman way, is that you have less. The Muslim way is saying Allah can put more barakah. So in $95, Allah can make me benefit more than in 100. Because the money itself is not what we want. Money is a medium of exchange. We don't eat money. We don't, you can't actually benefit from a dollar. But only what it buys you is how it benefits. And sometimes we're hit with a parking ticket that takes away so much of our money. Like that takes away a little bit of money. You say, oh, I was not destined to hold on to that. Something comes and breaks my rearview mirror and I have to repair it. I lose money there. I have no choice to lose it. Something gets robbed. I lose my credit card, whatever. And so the loss and the gain of money is only in the hands of Allah. Allah wants to see, for my sake, will you part with money? Because money is what they call akhun nafs, al-mal akhun nafs. Money is the brother of the ego. People don't want to part from money. And so Allah says, if you love me, can you part with some of your money for me? But not all. I just want $1 out of every $40. Can you do that? And that's why it's a proof. That's why, what is the word for charity in Islam? General charity. We said it. Anybody know that the word for general charity in Islam is what? Let's get some participation.
You can put your answers in the chat, guys.
Yeah. Sadaqah. Good, Brother Imran. Now, what does that word come from? What Arabic word does that root word come from? Yeah, just look at the consonants and you realize. Sidq, which means what? Sadaqah comes from sidq, siddiq. You've got a siddiqi here, mashallah. What does it mean? Yeah, it means honesty, exactly. It means, are you true? Brother Sayyid Hassan's right. It's are you true? So what sadaqat is it's testing. Are you true to Allah? Are you honestly believing in Allah? That's your sidq. That's why your friend is called a sadiq. You're a person who is very, very true to you. He's honest to you, right? So now Allah says the people who work over the zakat, but this does not mean. So that person who's working full time, collecting people's zakat, sheep and camels and carrying bags of gold to distribute to the poor, that person has no job. So that's why it was said, give a little bit of the zakat to that person to be able to survive and do that. Now, does that mean that the CEO can make, $500,000 because he works for a zakat organization and they want to pay him so much that he cannot be tempted to do anything corrupt? No, this is not what it means. It means that what your needs are for a respectable thing in your field for your family. So alhamdulillah, when you work with this National Zakat Foundation, this is the benefit of it, that they know how to handle the zakat. And so the next category is those people whose hearts have been inclined towards Islam. Those people whose hearts have been inclined towards Islam. You see, in the beginning of Islam, when Islam was weak, you could say, the Ummah was weak. Islam was always strong. When Islam was weak in that sense, then they wanted to attract people because people had to leave everything just to become Muslim. So, in order to become Muslim, you have to give up your family, you have to give up your wealth, you have to give everything. So, it's such a huge loss. The incentive is very little except for faith. So then they would say, okay, maybe this person needs money, or here, let's give them some money. So, single mother with dependent children, non-Muslim comes to the masjid to learn about Islam. Okay, so what do? You take a little bit of a gift from zakat. You say, here, sister, please buy yourself and your children a warm meal. Buy them some new clothes. Bismillah. And what does she say? She says, mashallah, these Muslims, they really care about me, right? I'm just giving an example. It could be anybody else, not just single mother, but I'm giving an example, right? And she comes towards Islam in that case, right? This is what you call drawing people closer to Islam. Okay, tomorrow, Cornel West or George Galloway or some non-Muslim that you really respect for their how they stand up for Deen, right? They want to become Muslim, but now all of their funding is lost. All of their job is lost. If somebody loses their job because they are siding with the Muslims and now they're drawing towards Islam. This is where, there was if they're needy, you can take something. But later on, Sayyidina Umar, he ruled that actually this category is closed for the non-Muslims who are close to Islam. Why? He says because now Islam is strong. Now we don't need people to come in. So Sayyidina Umar actually made this judgment call, and that's something ijtihad. That's something only a huge Sahabi like that can do, right? So now most of the ulama say this category we don't use it anymore to give people money to become Muslim, to become inclined to Islam. But some people say, some scholars may say that it's valid. So it's not something that is focused on here at National Zakat Foundation because the priority is people who are actually poor, right? Now, wafir riqab, captives here does not mean you bail people out of jail. It means people who Muslims who have been captured by an enemy and need to be ransomed. So if today we could free our brothers and sisters in Palestine and say, okay, however much money per head, get all those kids out of those jails from the oppressors, we would say right away. We would say definitely. We will use our zakat. We will get by the freedom of our brothers and sisters, from a captive. That's what it means. And I'm giving a modern day example for you to understand why is that so important. Because the life of Muslims is important to Allah. The Muslim soul is important to Allah. All humans, subhanAllah, but especially Muslims. Why? Because we have to make our own community function for each other. So people wonder sometimes, why is zakat only for the Muslims? Why isn't it not for the non-Muslims? Because we need a method to take care of each other. Every country takes care of its citizens, and the ummah is like a nation. It's a spiritual nation, so it has to take care of its citizens too, right? That doesn't mean sadaqah, normal charity cannot go towards non-Muslims. It definitely can, but zakat is only for us. Wal gharimin, people who have debt. So you could be drowning in OSAP debt. Somebody had medical expenses that came up, drowning in debt. Now this person maybe makes a decent amount of money, but they can't pay their debts, right? They're drowning in debt. You're allowed to give zakat to that person. Wa fi sabilillah. The people who are, what does fi sabilillah here mean? It doesn't mean the people who, may Allah reward them. They go around, the masjids and they give dawah. Fi sabilillah doesn't mean this. Fi sabilillah doesn't mean, you have a civil rights organization. It does mean that in the sense of the spiritual sense. So even if you go to work for the sake of Allah to provide for your kids, the Prophet said in a hadith, you are fi sabilillah. But what it means here is those people who are in the path of Allah defending Islam. So it's it's more of a military, because in the olden days, you did not have a professional army the way that we have, that. So in the olden days, this category, and obviously this applies in that situation, right? And then Ibn Sabil. So what does Ibn Sabil means? It means someone who's traveling, they've been cut off. So let's say, for example, right? There are maybe some of you, I don't think everyone here is from the GTA Toronto area. Maybe some of you are from other places, right? I assume. And let's say one of you came all the way from out of town to attend a National Zakat Foundation seminar, right? And you're coming, and it's a National Zakat Foundation seminar, and we're holding it in, in the Rogers Center, okay? Because so many people have wanted to become Muslim, and they're learning about zakat, and people are coming back. We're holding a huge seminar on zakat. It's like a convention. And then you come and your wallet gets robbed. Na'udhu billah. You lose your credit card, you lose all your cash, you lose your passport, okay? And you don't even have gas in your car. This is where you can come into the masjid and say, listen, I'm not I earn a lot of money, but all my stuff, my wallet's gone, my passport, I don't have a hotel, I don't have food. This is where the masjid can say, okay, brother, here's a sum from zakat. Please go get some place to sleep for tonight, shower, have a meal. Inshallah, tomorrow we're going to help you get back home. You can do that. You can do that because that person is Ibn Sabil. I remember, as I revealed yesterday to people, when I first became Muslim, I was a penniless student with student debt. I wanted to study Islam. I don't think they told me, but the masjid, this is the Islamic Foundation of Toronto, they helped me get to Yemen. They bought me a plane ticket. You know how? Through zakat. Because they said you're going to study, inshallah, the deen, and you're a poor, struggling student convert to Islam. So I'm telling you that the way that this zakat can be used in a halal way to bring about benefit, it's amazing, the power of zakat. And this is where National Zakat Foundation is using it in a responsible manner. That's very important. Then Allah says, Faridan min Allah, it is a fard from Allah. You cannot change these categories. Nowadays, people want to change the categories. So they'll say, oh, we want to get the mayor on our side. Okay, so we're going to give him a huge cash gift, like a kind of a bribe. So Allah says to incline the hearts to Islam, so we're going to give them a kind of a kickback, lobbying money. No, you cannot do this. This is not right. Or there are other categories that are being misused. Fi sabilillah. Now let me ask you, can you use zakat to fund a Muslim children's cartoon that will save the iman of the children? Can you do that? Can you use zakat to fund a project? Let's say I'm going to make an Islamic educational cartoon that will save the iman of the Muslim children. Can I do that to pay for the Islamic cartoon? Can you use zakat for that? These questions are not designed to make somebody feel that they're right or wrong. It's designed just to get us thinking about the mentality of zakat. Okay, actually you cannot. The reason Brother Imran and everyone else, is that you're right, it can be used for sadaqah. Sadaqah, I can say, I'm going to fund a Muslim cartoon that will save the iman of my children. I can do that. But does a Muslim cartoon company come underneath any one of these 8 categories? That's the question. So anytime someone's asking for zakat, I want you to look and see, are they in the 8 categories? Okay, here's another question. What about then for those people who are they are civil rights organizations and they are fighting for the rights of the Muslims in the path of Allah, of dawah, and of fighting for our civil rights? Can I use this to publish pamphlets, use zakat to publish pamphlets on civil rights and distribute them to everyone? Can I use that to fund my civil rights project and pay for the court case, the expensive court case that's going to come up to defend the Muslim civil rights? Can I do that with zakat? No. Correct. Why? Because where in these categories does it fit in? Somebody could say, okay, you're paying a poor lawyer. Okay, so the lawyer, let's say he's legally poor, right? Can I pay him to perform with zakat to perform the services of civil rights as a wage? Let's say he's poor. Can I pay him a wage? If you work this many hours on this case, I give you this. Can you do that? No. Why? But wait, he's legally poor. Why can't I do that, Sayyid Hassan? Think about this, guys. I'm trying to get you guys to develop that mindset. That mindset. Just think out loud. There's no. It's just a learning experience. Because zakat money cannot pay a wage. Charity, you cannot take charity and hire somebody with charity in the sense of, I mean, you can if it's an open sadaqah, but zakat is the haqq of the poor person. They can take it and do whatever they want with it. Now, you can say, I will give zakat to free up your time so that you work in beneficial things. You're a scholar or something if they're poor. But you cannot say, you do this 1 hour, I give you this much money, because now you're using it as a wage. And finally, to give another example, can you give money to the masjid to expand the prayer hall? Very needed thing. No. Again, why? Because it's not one of those categories. So anytime you have a madrasa or a masjid saying, we are collecting zakat to build our new building, brother, you say, no, this is not one of the categories of zakat. Now, they can use a trick. They can use a trick on how to justify it by giving it to a poor person first, and the poor person donates it back to the masjid. Some of the masjids do that. But think about this. By doing so, there's actually someone who's literally hungry, who's not going to have food that night because you're giving it to an organization that is using it for something other than those categories.
So there are actually a few questions in
Okay,
the Q&A
let's get to the questions.
that might actually help out with the with actually it's a good segue from because one of the questions, and let me just click on this, answer live. So I don't know if this question pop up to you when
Yep, I can see them. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good.
Shall I go through them now?
No, I put let me go ahead and so I did I clicked on this one. Can zakat money be given to madrasa or Islamic Learning Center for religious study, although they are charging a fee for the students? So that's kind of like maybe segues from what you just
Yeah, that's a good question. You can, but have to make sure that it's not going towards their operating expenses. It has to go, let's say, for example, this is to help a poor student, and that money will actually go in the student's hand that they pay back to afford their fees. You can do that. You can do that. So I'm a counselor with Canadian Muslim Counseling. There are some people who need therapy, and therapy is a paid product, it's a paid service, but they are legally poor. Somebody can donate zakat to the poor person who then chooses to pay for therapy. That you can do that. But what you cannot do is tell me, here, I'm paying you zakat and you don't deserve zakat, and now you serve poor people. No, you can say that this poor person has a debt. So in zakat, I'm giving them zakat, it's channeling towards you. You can do that. Does that make sense? So there's a difference between, yeah, it has to go to a person at the end of the day. It can be a madrasa. Maybe they're poor students. You buy food. The madrasa buys food and feeds the poor students. Yes, you can do that as zakat. But to build a library, no.
Okay, no, that's good. Good. The other question, I designated a person to distribute my zakat. Am I liable for zakat if that person didn't distribute it correctly?
So this is a very good question. Now the reality is that this could happen to anyone. I mean, even in the time of the Khalifa, they used to collect zakat as well. So what we say is, okay, if the person did not actually distribute their zakat, okay, you have to discharge it properly. But can you will Allah take you to account on a sin for something you did not do or intend? No, we don't believe this. That yes, it could be, let's say for example, the person, you gave them the sheep, and then on the way lightning struck and the sheep was killed by the lightning strike, right? And it was still with the distributor. It was not given to the poor yet. Okay, that may be, you may have to give again. That's one thing. But are you sinful for that? No. And once you actually discharge from your pocket and you give it to the organization, you are considered, your duty is done. So I don't have to say, when I give my zakat to National Zakat Foundation or the Khalifa of a Muslim government or whoever, I don't have to say, okay, now I want to see you take this dollar and give it to somebody. Because I trust that's what they do day in and day out, day in and day out. They know. So, yeah, are you sinful or anything by that? No. And this is why it's good, if you're not going to do it yourself, to trust an organization that you know is not just going to, they're a proper organization. They're not just going to fold tomorrow and then you don't know where the money went. That's very important and a good question. So
Okay.
is it on you? No.
So another question, I'm going to ask this question and then we're going to move on because this question kind of has like a general question about if a person has a good house and car, etc., but due to job crisis, his current financial position is bad, is he
Hmm.
still eligible for zakat?
You mean eligible to collect zakat or to pay zakat?
That's a good question. I'm assuming it means
And we'll get to that in Nisab actually. Why
yeah.
don't, do you want to wait for a second?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There are a couple questions on Nisab, but let's assume that this has to do with the eligibility because this is the categories of zakat. Let's deal with that part first, and then there are a bunch of other questions on Nisab and
Okay.
general playing, and then there's some specific questions. So we'll get to those kind of when we hit those specific categories. But let's just answer this in the way that is he eligible to get zakat?
Yeah. So this is a question of that requires a little bit of further research. Why? You could have a person who's living in a mansion. That mansion, he inherited that mansion. Okay. Or maybe that's not his. He's living in it, but he doesn't have food to eat, right? This has happened to people. They don't have anything to eat. They have debts that they're drowning in. So they could be that a person has those things and requires zakat because they are legally poor. They're legally poor. However, that being said, if you own enough and you can liquidate something in order to feed yourself, then you would not be able to collect zakat. If your possessions and the amount of money that you owe, the amount of objects that you own is enough that you could liquidate some of that, and you would not be legally poor, then no. But however, if it is that you are legally poor because your debts are drowning you, even though you have a job, you could have a job and you're still legally poor. So you could have a very, very respectable job, but because of all the debts that are on you and everything, you can, in that case, collect zakat if you're under the nisab. And we're going to talk about this in just a short moment. I hope that answers the question. So it's not always how it looks. A person could look very, in fact, the interesting thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran those people um, who are poor, but they don't make themselves appear like that out of their own kind of sense of dignity or self-respect. So sometimes to get help to those people, you have to know them very personally. They don't want to ask anybody. That's a very big thing in Muslim modesty as well. But it's not immodest to ask. So it depends on your situation. Now, sorry, is that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. I think the others have to do with Nisab.
Okay,
So
we're
once you
gonna
get
get to
into
that.
that, we'll take a bit of pause and address those questions, inshallah.
Okay, that's coming. That's coming right now, inshallah. Let me close this and move on. So we talked about the categories of zakat, right? Now here's another differentiation between what is the difference between zakat as like as the main duty of Islam, five pillar, and a charity, sadaqat. Zakat is obligatory, faridatan min Allah. You don't have a choice. So you cannot say, I think I'm going to pay my zakat this year. No, you have to pay your zakat. Any year you didn't, you actually owe back zakat. So now is the best time when you learn this to start paying back zakat that you owe, because that actual money is the money of the poor in your pocket. You don't even own that money in your bank account. It actually belongs to some, maybe a little girl, a little boy who is poor and they're not getting it. So it's obligatory. Whereas the sadaqah is voluntary. That's as much as you want to give, as little, You can give in any way. Zakat has a prescribed rate, 2.5%. Charity does not have a prescribed rate. So in charity, you could give 20% of your wealth. But in zakat, you must give at least 2.5%. You cannot say, you know what, this year, I think I'm going to do just 2% of my wealth. You have to say, no, 2.5% once you're qualified. And zakat is given by Muslims to Muslims only. Okay? So we don't go to the non-Muslims and say, pay your zakat. No. In the non-Muslims who are living in the Muslim caliphate, in the Muslim country, they cannot be pushed to pay zakat. Sadaqah can be given by anyone to anyone. So a non-Muslim can give a non-Muslim sadaqah, and a non-Muslim can give a Muslim sadaqah, Muslim can give a non-Muslim, and it goes that way too. And zakat is restricted to only 8 categories, whereas charity you can give to anybody. If you want to give to a Islamic entertainment company to fund, Islamic like Muslim clowns for entertaining madrasa parties who will be halal in their entertainment, you can do that. Even as weird as it sounds, I can give charity to that if I want to. I want to make a dog sanctuary with charity money so that the dogs on the street they have some place to eat and to drink, shelter. I can do that. Inshallah, will be rewarded for that. But is it zakat? No, it's not zakat, right? And needless to say, zakat you cannot apply it towards a pet, right? Zakat is given at a specific time. Charity is not at a specific time, and zakat is only on specific due assets. So we're going to talk about what things do you have zakat on. So let me ask you, if I've got a, $1 million Pokemon card collection, $1 million Pokemon card collection, and it's my personal thing, do I have to pay zakat on that? No, I don't. Okay, but what if I have a car that I drive, but I have a Porsche that's just extra beyond my needs? Do I have to pay zakat on that? I just keep it in the garage. I just drive it once in a while. But it's beyond my needs. Do I pay zakat on that Porsche? Let's say it's a Bugatti. Okay, who thinks yes? Who thinks no? Anyone else? Okay, say Hassan's going out on a limb, mashallah. This is how you learn. Actually, you don't pay zakat on that. You could live in one house and you can own 10 houses, 10, but you just own them. You're not trying to sell them. Then you don't pay zakat on that. You don't. Why? Because zakat is not, there's zakats on certain items and not on other items. This is the whole point of this very useful slide, right? So let's get back and I'm going to explain what things zakat is due on. Okay, these are the categories we talked about. Now, the reason why we go over these categories so much is so that you don't accidentally discharge it with a good intention, but you don't discharge it to people who don't deserve. Because if you give it to people who don't deserve it, you then have to go and give your zakat to people who do deserve it. And nowadays, because people, we're not living in a traditional Islamic time, people are using zakat for all kinds of justifications. Anybody who just makes an organization is saying zakat eligible, because I got a fatwa. So, and the National Zakat Foundation, we would follow what the majority scholars, the well-known scholars will say. We're not going to follow, one fatwa that will allow zakat to just basically become anything you want it to become. Doesn't make sense to do that, right? Otherwise, Allah wouldn't say it's a fard. Now, because you don't pray any way you want to, anytime you want to. Same with zakat. You don't give it to anyone or in any way you want. Unlawful recipients, we talked about this. Those who are rich, those who are wealthy cannot receive zakat. And wealthy means you have wealth to the amount of the nisab after your debts. That's what it means. We'll talk about nisab, meaning the minimum threshold for how to be considered eligible or liable to pay zakat. Number 2, unlawful recipients of zakat to those capable of earning an income. Okay, they don't do so out of laziness. So let's say you have a guy, he's 30 years old, living in his parents' basement, playing video games. Okay, his parents provide for him. He comes to the masjid, and he's healthy, perfectly healthy, he's educated. And he says, oh, I don't have any money. What do you do all day? I just play video games. Okay, can you collect zakat? Technically speaking, he might be eligible because he doesn't own money, because his parents give him whatever food he needs for the day. But it's not honorable for a person to do this. So National Zakat Foundation as well would look and scrutinize. And I don't, by the way, to clarify, I don't work for National Zakat Foundation. I'm just saying an organization that's responsible like them would work to scrutinize that, is this person really deserving of the zakat? And someone has to ask. Someone has to ask, because a person could do this. They could say, you know what? Oh man, these Muslims, they have zakat. I can go to this masjid, get 200, this masjid 200. There's over 200 masjids in uh in Toronto, in GTA. Okay, if you got $200, little bit from 200 masjids, you have like, how much money would you have? You would have enough to live very, very comfortably. So you can, every single place you go, you can say, I'm needy, I'm needy, I'm needy. But if you're capable of earning, and it's not honorable to go and to become dependent. Yes, if a person genuinely needs it, or they're out of work or whatever, that's different. If they qualify for under the nisab. And then the disbelievers. And also there are some people, you'll be surprised, when they learn that the Muslims give out charity, put on the hijab, they come, salam alaikum, like they pretend to do the salams, and they're like, are you Muslim? Yes, I'm Muslim. You ask them, they don't know anything about Islam. Outside lifestyle, not Islamic. But they realize that Muslims give charity to each other. Now, is it okay as a dawah to say, okay, take your shahada, bismillah, you'll get your zakat, you know, because they actually join the community. And could be a means of entering into Islam. But can a non-Muslim just say salams and get zakat? No. And you'd have to look at this. If there's some reason to believe they're not a Muslim, the person responsible to distribute would say, oh, okay, mashallah, you're Muslim, mashallah, okay, when, you would, in a polite way, you would inquire if you think that there's really a reason not to. Okay.
Uh,
Next.
a small quick question
Mhm,
on that I have from actually on my own,
mhm.
and actually is a little bit in addition to that, the recipients that got related to like family, immediate family, things like that. There's certain like nuances there, perhaps not covered in that slide, and maybe you can give.
Yeah. Okay, brother Asif, can I ask you to take, like, sometimes I might just make a note, and just take a note if you could, please. So we wanted to make a misconception slide. So one of the misconceptions was zakat is a tax. The next one is going to be, I can give zakat to my husband, okay, or my wife. Is this what you're asking? Can you pay it to your immediate family?
Yeah, like as in
Yeah.
there's certain kind of
Yeah.
concerns about like those you inherit from versus like
Yes. So you cannot pay zakat to up to your ascendants, to your mother and father, for example. You cannot pay a zakat to your spouse, and you cannot pay zakat down to your descendants. Why? Because the whole meaning of it to be zakat, it has to leave your possession completely. It has to leave such that you have no benefit from it. If I give my wife zakat, who's going to benefit? I'm still going to benefit from it because I have to support her anyways. So if I give her zakat, I'm making it easier on myself to support her. If she pays me zakat, she's going to benefit too. Why? Because I'm going to supposed to spend it back on her. Same with your parents. Are you supposed to give? Can you collect zakat for your parents? No, because you owe them to support them anyway. Your children, same thing. So zakat has to leave your immediate genealogical tree. Now, can you give zakat to your uncle in need? You can give zakat to a needy cousin, for example. You can give zakat to a needy, even a needy sibling. You can do that, right? But that's why, because it's going out of your benefit. But what you shouldn't do is, let's say you all live in a joint family, okay, and I'll just give zakat to this brother, and they'll spend it back on the groceries for us, and then you're not allowed to do it in a such a way that you will benefit from it. In that, it has to be completely gone from your benefit and your hands. Does that answer the question, brother Asif?
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Yeah,
that's why it's so closely related to
yeah,
inheritance
yeah.
laws. Like, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Now, can you give it to your father-in-law and your mother-in-law? Yes, you can. Why? Because you're not liable to support them. Okay, you're not liable to support them. But think about this logically. If you are sitting and you're living in their house, and then you're giving them the zakat to pay you back in food, naturally the benefit there is, you're not supposed to have a circular benefit. You should not see
Mm,
the benefit of that.
mm.
However, at the same time, the best zakat should start with the family members. وَابْدَأْ بِمَنْ يَعُولُ, right? Or like that. I should put it this way. That's a different hadith. But it's the idea that if you have distant relatives, you have one khandan, like as they call it, one qabila, one tribe. If everybody in a tribe or a extended family was to take care of the poor of their family, nobody would be poor. This is why, subhanallah, when I used to live in Jordan, there are people who were poor, but you would almost never find someone homeless. You would almost never find a homeless person because everyone has a tribe, and their tribe would take care of them to some extent. But nowadays, nobody has a tribe anymore. Nobody has, so this is why now NZF will collect zakat and give it to people who nobody knows if they have a family member or not, right? There are people in society who pass away in their homes. Nobody is informed. Weeks later, they're found. Unfortunately, in their apartment. You say janaza for a brother, and he has no family members in Canada. So it does happen, and this is where zakat has to go outside, but you can look within your extended family, but not your direct chain of family. Okay, ascendants and descendants, or spouse. Next is tamlik is something required for zakat. Tamlik means you have to completely transfer the ownership from the payer to the recipient. So you can't say, here's your zakat. I'm going to hold on to it. Okay. And it's not yours, but I've discharged it. It's for you, but it's not for you. I'm going to keep it. You can't do that. You have to actually give it to them. They do what they want. Now, let me ask you something. If I tell somebody, can you pay the in-laws? Yes, you can say that. If I tell somebody, here is zakat for you to go and buy your books, your school books, or this is zakat to pay for your food, and I give that person the money, do they have to do what I tell them to do with the zakat? Do they have to do what I tell them to do with the zakat? Mhm. If I say, here's zakat to pay your debts, brother, here you go. Can I say, oh, you have to do it in this now? What do you guys think? Saeed Hassan, come on, take a stab at it. Sister Yusra, Brother Imran, everyone else. It's just, again, to sharpen our understanding. It's not to test. Because we're here because we want to learn, right? So, no, you cannot. You cannot tell the person. Why? Because if I tell you that this money, you have to do it in this way, it means you have not really given them ownership of it. But it can mean that I'm not going to give my zakat to you next time. It can do that. So, for example, it happens that the people come and they say, you know what? Like if the person wants to take your zakat and then go spend it, instead of spending it on food, they spend it on cigarettes and alcohol. Na'udhu. I mean, you could not stop them. I can withhold giving them the zakat and say, what are you going to spend this on? Shouldn't ask like that, but you can talk to them. Hey, what are your needs? Okay, all right. But if they're like, I'm going to spend it on my video game addiction, then I don't have to give it to them. Once I give it to them, I can't control how they spend it. Because why? Because there's an inherent dignity. When you give someone something, they own it. That's how you know it's zakat is theirs. They own it. Tamlik has occurred. I own it. I can do what I want with it, right? So when paying for services on behalf, now, if you give them zakat and they go spend it in something haram, oftentimes you see someone and they say, oh, don't give him money, he's just going to spend it on drugs. To be honest, unless you're actually purposely feeding his drug habit, that's different. But if you say, look, he's also hungry though, he's also on the street, so it's not your sin if they do something wrong with the money. You can just decide, what I might want to do differently, but you get your reward. You get your reward. Now, when paying for services on behalf of zakat recipients, the transfer of ownership does not take place. However, zakat can be used to provide direct services to those in need with a clear agreement and consent. So what happens? If you're getting counseling, for example, where I'm a counselor, then I can say to a person, okay, I can't say, here, I'm going to give it to you give my zakat to you as a service. But I can say, I'm giving you the zakat, but do you authorize me as the recipient of the zakat to put it in this hand, this service, for you to get to benefit? And the person's like, yes, I completely agree. Like it's basically in my possession, given to the service. That's what you're saying. So according to the position of NZF, that is permissible to do. Why? Because there are some people who require zakat for certain medical services or treatment or something like that, and you want to make sure that they prioritize that. But it has to be with their consent and agreement. I can't say, all right, without asking you, I've decided I'm checking you into drug rehab, and you're going to do this. Unless they say, no, I don't want that. I want the cash. You cannot force them. You have to say, okay, if they agree, then you take their money on behalf of them and you buy this service. That is okay, according to the position taken. So, in other words, examples include schooling, Quranic education, counseling. The best model to do this that I've seen, however, is to let them sign up for that, and it becomes a debt that they owe to the company, and you pay that debt on their behalf, right? However, for example, can a yeah, so that's an example. Are there any questions about that? Zakat for services. Now, can a landlord who has tenants, and he said my tenant owes me rent from last month, can I, instead of my zakat, can I just say, basically in my mind, my zakat is that I paid the guy's rent to myself and I let him go for that rent. You cannot do that from one pocket to the other pocket unless you, it's basically symbolically what you're doing is here's your zakat and I'm taking it back from you for to pay your rent. You can actually do that. You can. For example, or you could pay their debt, but it has to be with their authorization to do that. Now, there's another question. Do you have to tell someone that the money that you're giving them is zakat? Do I have to say, here's my zakat? No, you do not have to tell someone this is zakat. You could just give them as a gift. In your mind, you're intending zakat. In your mind, you're intending zakat. But you don't want to humiliate that person in front of other people or make them feel, like, oh, I think you're poor and I'm no. You can just see someone in the masjid and you know this person is below the nisab line. And you just say, here, brother, here's a gift for you. Here, I brought you some pizza. You can give that. Can you give pizza as zakat? Do you have to give cash? You can give in kind. So people don't realize that. People think that zakat is only given in cash. And maybe we could write that down for another misconception. Zakat is not only given in wealth, but wealth is the most. Then you would have to then you should be honest. You shouldn't say no, it's not zakat money. You know, no, it's not zakat money. But you can say in a roundabout way, is it zakat money? Because they may say, is this zakat money? Because I'm a Sayyid, right? Sayyid Hassan. Is this zakat money? Because I'm a Sayyid. I can't take zakat. So there may be a good reason to ask. Then you have to tell them, okay, no problem. Or you switch your intention very quickly. Okay, it's not zakat, right? There's a question coming up. I can hear ask this mic.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I was just kind of see maybe there's a question, but I think you just covered it because somebody had asked, about whether they should ensure that what do they have to do to ensure that person is eligible for zakat. I think you really have to go and figure out whether they are eligible. You can't just, I mean, you've covered all the examples here to say that,
Yeah.
well, you really have to know that they are in need and things like that, and those aren't simple things to do. So it's not like, well, he looks like he's poor. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because you could, look, there's times where it's very clear, right? Like the person is living on the street.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I don't think
homeless
they're
person.
above
Yeah,
nisab.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
like a person's homeless, or their situation, like they're a refugee, they just came, or they lost everything. But this is where NZF, National Zakat Foundation, takes that the need of investigation away, so it gives dignity to the poor, because then not everyone from the community is inquiring into a person's bank balance. You can't do that. But if it's a service, then a person will come and tell, this is my bank balance, this is my expenses. So, okay, legally, you are considered poor and needy. Legally, you are in debt. And so this is where, your investigation should not become prying into a person's business, but an organization can do that in an easier way, right? In a tasteful way, in a way that does not humiliate the other person. And even zakat organizations, they should make sure they do not humiliate the other person, right? That's very important. They should feel like I'm coming to in an honorable way. The same way you go to the government and you sign up for a benefit or something like that, right? It should feel like an honorable process, right? Because it's actually your haq. It's like when you go to the government to get a benefit, it's your haq. You're not embarrassed. Oh, I don't know if I should ask for this benefit from the government. It's your haq. So they have no shame. But because Islam teaches modesty, so the way when you inquire into a person's financial thing, you have to be very careful. Yeah, right. If it's clear, that's different, right?
Yeah, I think a quick follow-up on the Said question. Essentially, I think what you were summarizing, that if they are a descendant of the Prophet ﷺ, in their lineage, then they cannot receive zakat. I think they can also not receive sadaqah either, right? Is
No,
that
sadaqah they can.
okay?
Sadaqah
Sadaqah,
they
okay,
can.
so that's
Yeah.
clear. So the clarity there is that they do not receive zakat. Like
Zakat, no.
zakat.
And the reason why is because, so it's important to understand why. right? Two reasons. Number one, zakat is when you go to work, do you work a perfect 8 hour day, or do you like check your phone sometimes, take a long break sometimes? Are you 100% in everything that you're doing? There may be aspects of your wealth, slight little inconsistencies where you did not perform according to task. And that little bit of wealth is dirty money because you don't actually get paid or deserve the entire amount. Okay, that's an example, right? So therefore, you may not even realize some parts of your wealth. I'm not saying your wealth is haram, but there's parts of your wealth that are not like they're not earned in the best of ways. It doesn't mean it's haram, but what it means is there's something about your wealth that's kind of like not the purest. Now, when you pay zakat, the sins of your inadvertent sins, they leave with that amount of money. Okay, so that amount of zakat money, the Prophet ﷺ said, once his grandson, was crawling around and found a date from zakat and put it in his mouth. The Prophet ﷺ took the date out and said, "This is not for us. إِنَّمَا هِيَ أَوْسَاخُ النَّاسِ." This zakat is the filth of people, because they give their sins away by purifying. Zakat means to purify. They purify their wealth by giving the 2.5%. So this now 2.5% is like, to be honest, it's like you excrete it. You excrete you take it out and you give it to those people, and it becomes pure to those who deserve it. But the Prophet ﷺ never wanted his own family. So nobody can accuse Rasulullah ﷺ, oh, you made zakat to benefit you and your clan. He said, no, I'm not doing that. Now, they did have a different function on how to support the Sayyids or the Sharifs who are legitimately connected, not just if your last name is that, but you have a lineage that you could trace to the Rasul through the male lineage. Then those people cannot accept zakat, but sadaqah is possible, right? And then there are other opinions as well that in our times, because the Khalifa is not there to take care of the Sayyids, then are they allowed to take zakat? Some opinions say because of that they can, or can zakat Sayyids give zakat to other Sayyids? That's also another question, but those are like details, right? So next, where are we?
I think you were going to go into nisab or finish
Here we
it.
go.
That's right.
Fundamentals of nisab. Nisab is the amount of money that you have to be liable to pay. So if you have $100 in your bank account, do you have to pay zakat? No. Can you pay zakat? Yes. Do you have to pay zakat? No. Right? That's an example. So there's two standards on how to look at paying zakat, because real money in Islam is not dollars and cents. It's gold and silver. That's the currency of Islam. In fact, that's the currency of creation. Is gold and silver. They have intrinsic value. Paper, once the government says this banknote is demonetized, it's not going to be worth anything. But the reason why we pay zakat on paper money is because that's the money that we use nowadays. Otherwise, nobody would pay zakat. Say, oh, that's fiat currency, that's paper money, right? But if you use that excuse, fine. Then don't eat from it, don't pay your rent from it, don't pay your bills from it, whatever it is. So, but how do we trace back how much money you have to have in dollar amounts? You go to gold and silver. The Prophet ﷺ was reported that verily the Prophet ﷺ used to take zakat from people in every 20 dinars, half a dinar. So 0.5 over 20 is how much? It's 1 over 40. 1 over 40 is how much percent? 2.5%. Okay? That's where you get the 2.5%. And for silver, the zakat is 1/40th of the lot. And if its value is less than 200 dirhams, zakat is not required. But if the owner wants to pay, they can. So in other words, if you do not have 20 dinars worth of gold, or you do not have 200 silver dirhams, you don't have to pay. But how much is that? This is the calculation. On the nisab of gold, 20 dinars is 85 grams of gold, which equals approximately $8,000 Canadian. And on the silver standard, 200 dirhams is 600 grams, 640 Canadian dollars. Why is there a difference? Because in the olden days, gold and silver used to actually be very, very similar in value. But what happened is, as time went by, silver went down and gold went up. That's why there's a discrepancy. So here's the question. Is it $8,000? If I have $8,000, I pay zakat, or $640? Which one is more beneficial to the poor? that you pay according to the 8,000 mark. So only if you have 8,000 and plus, you have to pay zakat. Or if you have $640 plus, then you pay zakat. Which one is more beneficial to the poor? 640, because more people end up paying zakat. So more people pay, right? Because if you said, okay, 8,000 is the threshold, a lot of people don't have $8,000. A lot of people don't have $8,000, right? So this is why it is a threshold. Now, however, at the same time, let me ask you something. If you have $700 in your bank account and you have a family, are you financially secure? If all you have is $700, that's your entire saving. It's all your wealth. And you have an entire family to feed for the month. Are you secure? In Toronto? Absolutely not.
That's a good caveat in Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. If you're in like Yemen, you'd be bawling, right? You'd be absolutely bawling. But in I remember we used to live off of $200 a month max in Yemen, me and my wife. Alhamdulillah. But even if you have a big family or you have certain needs, medical expenses and stuff like that, now it's probably changed. Actually, I shouldn't say that yet in Yemen, because I lived there, but that was a long time ago. Maybe India, Pakistan, maybe people can live off of that. But generally speaking, in the West, you're below the poverty line. SubhanAllah, I was looking at in California. This is obviously a very big stretch. In one certain counties, if you make less than $100,000, you're below the poverty line. Can you imagine?
That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. If you have a family and a home, because you can't afford a house, you can't afford anything. So so every society has a different way of looking at it. So this is why the scholars say is an advantage for those people who can pay. So you're a housewife, doesn't have any needs. She has about $1,000. For her, giving zakat on the $1,000 because it's above $650 is fine. A child, your teenager has $2,000 in their bank account. They're not going to need the money right now for anything. That's fine. They should pay zakat on that. So more poor people will get zakat. But father of four, and all he has is $800 till the end of the month. You're going to tell the guy to pay zakat based on the silver standard? No, absolutely not. In fact, that person can go collect zakat based on the gold standard. So it's such a somebody says 2.5% will only be only $16. So will make any such financial difference? You'll be surprised that somebody with who does not have that much savings, right? Every single bit of money might matter to them. Every single bit of money might matter. So we don't know how their personal savings are. But yeah, if that's how they see it, like, you know what, $16, it's not going to make a difference to me. Bismillah. That is good for them. But there may be someone who says $16. I don't know. We have rent. We've got heat. How am I going to pay the bills? Plug my computer for a second. So yeah. Now the $8,000, right? So here, the NZF says that it's safer to go with the silver nisab because more people pay, but going by the gold is still acceptable for people, right? And one of the wisdoms is you can actually see on which standard you have to pay. So it does not mean that you minus this amount from your wealth. No, it means once your wealth free of debts is equal or above this amount, then you pay zakat. Okay. Any questions on nisab? We're going to talk now
Yeah,
about.
actually, there's one question in the question Q&A
Sure.
that maybe I can.
Sure.
So I'll read this out to you. Actually, maybe this is something that perhaps somebody can even comment on a little bit on the chat to kind of qualify what they mean by this. But I'll just read it. Maybe you'll get the sense of what this is. Can I give more than zakat nisab to any one person collectively to ease his problems or pay loans? For example, zakat nisab in Canada is $640, but a person needs $5,000 to resolve his problems. In this case, can the person receiving zakat also qualify to pay zakat due to holding more money than his nisab? So it's a little convoluted. It's like there are two questions, kind of like 2 or 3 questions in there together. So
Yes, the answer is you can, but you cannot give it. So, for example, I can't give someone in steps zakat to the point where once I give them an amount of money that puts them over the nisab, then they're legally rich. So let's say I want to give someone $10,000 because of their debts, medical expenses, debts, and I give them $9,000, and I want to give them 1,000 more in zakat. I can't because I crossed them over the nisab. If you give it all at once, you can. So you put them all at once and you fulfill their need completely, they're over nisab, you can do that. But what you can't do is get the person above the nisab and then continue to give them. Now, there is a loophole because nisab of silver is only $650. So I can say, here, I give you 1,000, but based on the gold standard, you're not above nisab. So I can keep giving you until, but once you cross the $8,000 mark, then I cannot give you more zakat. But what I can do, I can hold it in trust. So I can say, okay, right now you're above nisab, but I know next month you're going to fall back down. I will give you zakat at that time when you don't have. Okay, so I can do that. I can hold it in trust. If that's what's most beneficial for the poor, you can do that. That
Yeah,
makes sense?
and I think also that the nisab is like, well, even if you give them the money, they have to have held it for a year for it to become like a nisab amount for them, right? If you give them enough money that they can actually hold the whole nisab, because then they would be due, because that's when zakat will be due on them, right? Like they'll actually have to actually
Right, but
have
the
that money.
difference is the 1 year, the lunar year, is to see if you have to pay it. But to collect it, if you lose your $1 million wealth
Hmm.
and tomorrow you don't have money, you can collect zakat tomorrow. Does that
Yes.
make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
absolutely.
need is immediate. The payment is delayed by 1 year. Allahu Akbar. Look at that, how Allah's mercy is, right? The people who have to pay, they wait 1 year on their wealth to pass. And we're going to explain what that means. So that it's not like the minute I get money, I have to pay. I have to see, am I still in this financial position a year later? And then Allah says, okay, now pay, right? But the poor person, the minute they're in a dire strait, they can take money. Okay? Now, Allah knows, is as usual, guys, there's loopholes to everything. I can say, oh, I give my $1 million to my little kid, and I have nothing, and I collect zakat. But who are you trying to fool? Allah knows. Some people can do this. I gave away all my money to my wife. Now I'm zakat eligible. Give me, you know. But Allah knows when you're eating, because when you eat something haram, then you're just putting hellfire in your stomach. That's what you're doing, right? Okay. So any other questions about nisab before we go on? So any other questions about nisab?
No, I think you should move on. Like, and we can get into some
Okay.
of these scenarios and stuff like
What
that.
is zakat paid on? It's paid on cash and cash-like assets. Okay. So you've got your Amazon gift card, right? That's a money value asset, right? You've got cash. You've got for example, so anything that's cash or that's operating like cash, allowing you to buy something, you have to pay zakat on that. That's eligible. Okay. Gold and silver, whether it's in ingots, bullion, coins, a nugget, you have to pay. Now, jewelry, there's a difference of opinion that we're going to get to. We're going to get to that difference of opinion. Zakat is paid on debts owed to you. So accounts receivable, a business when they're paying their zakat, and this is another thing, corporations should pay zakat as a corporation. Right? Individuals should pay zakat as an individual. Unless you're so mixed up in sole proprietorship, that's different. Now, the debts owed to you, like somebody owes you $10,000, you're gonna get it. You're expecting to get it soon. Do you pay zakat on that? Yes, you do, because it's accounts receivable. But if it's like a debt from high school, man, that like you lent somebody $1 to go get a popsicle, the guy hasn't paid me back. It's like it's a dead debt. It's a written off debt, so you don't expect it to come back. You lent money to somebody out in back home, and you ain't getting it back. Like that's gone. You know, once you give money to a relative back home, it's like, yeah, right. Are you gonna get it back? Right. So that's an example of it's the debt. It's the money that you lend to others that is going to be repaid. Right. You didn't intend to give it away. Okay, I give it away. You're expecting to get it back. And your shares and investments, you have to pay zakat on those. We're going to talk about that. And business inventory. Let me ask you something. Let's say I own 10 cars, and I own them. Do I have to pay zakat on those 10 cars? No, I don't have to. You know why? Because your own possessions, that's not cash or investments, and it's not a merchandise for sale. You don't have to pay zakat. Now, What if I own those 10 cars, but they're my business? I'm an auto trader. Yes. I'm a car salesman and I own 10 cars and I'm going to sell them. Do I have to pay zakat on the value of the entire car? If I those 10 cars that I owned and I'm selling the cars, they're on a lot. Do I have to pay zakat on the value of those cars? Actually, you do. So that's why the people who pay the most zakat are going to be the merchants, the business people. And it makes sense because their entire job is to turn around profits. It is a lot sometimes, right? So like, you're like, what? A whole car I'm going to pay zakat on? Yes, because it is an instrument of profit. So it's going to represent a cash value. So someone who owns a dollar store, how do they pay zakat? They do an inventory and they calculate not according to the market retail value. They calculate according to the cost price, wholesale cost price, the cheapest price of the value of this. So even the car, not on the markup value, on like the even gold, not based on the market value, but on the scrap value. Okay, so if I was just like liquidating all these things, what would be the cheapest wholesale, cost price? That you calculate your entire inventory, 2.5%. So even if it's dollar store items, little items, or even if it's houses. So that means somebody who just buys a second house for their daughter when they grow up, when they get married, no zakat on that because it's your personal use. But once I say I'm flipping houses and I'm buying the house to flip it, then I have to pay zakat on that if it's for 1 year, over 1 year, I'm above the nisab. Okay, it's a very important thing. That means that now what this also means is that Islam encourages, start moving your wealth, move your wealth, move your wealth, move your wealth, right? So, okay, that's why
Yes.
the biggest zakat comes from the businesses. Yes.
So there are a bunch of questions around different topics. So maybe what we can do is just
Let's do
spend a
it.
little time like just getting into them because I think they'll probably make the questions and the information go faster. So you mentioned on the flipping of property kind of thing. So as in like I think what you explained was like it's got to be held for the property as be an inventory, whether it's property or it's cars or it's whatever it is that is your business that you are flipping. It has to be held, that inventory held for a year and it or is that
No. So I should say it like this. No. So we're gonna get to that slide in a second where you have to be above nisab on both ends of your zakat year. So you
okay,
start
okay,
you start your year when you start. We're gonna get to the slide. The inventory will come and go.
okay,
So
okay.
you'll sell inventory, get more,
Okay. You just
But
have to
if
be on
on
nisab for the whole year, exactly.
no, not even for the whole year. You have to be above nisab for the two ends of the year.
Okay,
So if I got $10,000, my zakat anniversary starts. That date that I got $10,000, my timeline starts. 1 year later, I could go below 10,000. I could go below 8,000. I could go up to 1 million. I could come back down. But on the end of the year, 1 lunar year later, I have to see, am I above the nisab? I pay on all of my wealth 2.5%, whether
okay,
I'm here or whether I'm here. If I'm below that day, I happen to pay my rent or I happen to pay tuition and I'm below, I don't have to pay zakat that
okay,
year. And
okay.
then
So
you
that
wait.
that will address a bunch of questions here. So let me summarize what you said here. So basically, if over a year that you from when you measured it the first time at the beginning of your period of measurement, like you're above the nisab, and at the end of that period of measurement, you're also above the nisab. You know what I mean? Like it's in the net of your standing wealth is that you are above nisab. Is essentially what you're saying. At that particular point in time, you have to assess all your wealth at that time, right? That's on which zakat would be due. Business would be one of them, whether it's stocks or sorry, whether it's if it's business, it's like inventory, land, cars for sale, whatever it is, and it has to be paid on the amount that I think is meant like as in what is marked for sale, what the market value of that amount is, right?
No,
Or the
it's on the
cost.
wholesale. It's on the wholesale cost value.
Okay, okay. So
Yeah,
that's an important distinction as well. So the
yeah,
wholesale cost, right? Not the profit, not necessarily it's whatever the wholesale
not the
cost
markup.
of that. Yeah, not the markup, not the profit, because that answers a bunch of questions in the thing about
Yeah.
whether or not the profit is included, what actually the sale price is included, whatever it is. It's like what
And that,
the
yeah.
what is if it's inventory, like if it's inventory that you're selling, you're moving, it's the wholesale cost of that. Now that
Yeah.
might be different. Now that doesn't include like if you have property that you're selling, right? Because that's not considered inventory, is it?
No,
Because,
no, that
yeah.
obviously has a fair market value, right?
Okay.
You can cost that, you can pay according to, there's a difference between how you mark up something and what the actual value of that product is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the lowest accepted value of that property, and you can evaluate a property. So
Mm-hmm.
you can say, okay, you can get an appraisal to look at that property. Say, how much is this? That's if you're flipping it, and you bought it with the intention of flipping it. Just if you're selling your own house doesn't mean you pay zakat on it because you didn't buy it with the intention to sell it, right?
Right. Right.
So it's you bought it with the intention to sell your dollar store items. You bought them. If you own a dollar store, those pens and papers, you bought them with the intention to sell it. But let's say I bought those pens and papers to supply my school, then no, I don't have to because it's not a good of sale in the intention.
Right.
Okay.
And I think just a corollary to this, like one of the questions was that if they receive a jump on stocks a few days before the zakat calculation day, do you have to calculate zakat on the entire balance of the
On the
on
day
zakat?
of,
Yes.
it's the value on the day of your zakat. So it could be you have a crash in
Mm-hmm.
your stock value, then you don't have to worry. Even if the stock was riding high, you had Tesla stock riding high, the day of the zakat coming due, it just crashed. You pay on the day what the value is. Okay.
Okay. Excellent.
So the next thing is you have to have, let's like you only pay zakat if you have the following criteria. Number one, you have complete ownership of the wealth. If the wealth is not completely owned by you, you don't have to pay zakat on it, right? So you have to have ownership of that thing. Now that doesn't mean that you don't have a percentage. So you could be in a business partner with another partner, but you own a certain chunk of that. So then your responsibility, let's say you own 30%, you have a 30% stake, then the 30% is yours. That's how you would figure that, right? But you have to have complete ownership where it's not like between husband and wife, we kind of share this. I'm not really sure whose it is, or parent and child, they're not sure. Like, did my parents give it to me or not give it to me? So you have to be, I own this. I know that I own this, right? That's the first thing. Second thing, the wealth is free from haram income. Okay, so let me ask you guys something. How much percentage of zakat or amount is due on income, let's say generated if the guy owns a liquor store or an interest-based profiting company, credit company, or if they own a lottery tickets store? How much percentage of zakat do you have to pay on that? Here's a question for everybody. How much percentage of zakat do you pay on your earnings from like liquor store or haram income, basically? We cannot get zakat on non-haram income. You mean non-halal income? Yeah. So you're right. Actually, there's no zakat due on this. It's not, oh, great, I get to keep it all. Exactly, exactly what they said. That actually, there's not zakat that's due on this because zakat is not going to purify this. Some people think I can own a liquor store, I can sell pork. At the end of it, I'm just going to give zakat in charity. Bismillah, I purified my wealth. Nope, you cannot launder money in Islam like that. Rather, you have to give all of it away. And you cannot even intend to get rewarded for doing that. So even if you give away $1 million in haram wealth, not a penny of that is charity. Why? Because it's haram. So you don't deserve to have it. So you have to give it, you should give it away in some type of beneficial avenue that is not directly tied to Muslims what they eat. So although there's different opinions, as well. So NZF also does cleansing of wealth. You give them your interest-based earnings. So you have like money invested in a fund that has an instrument that has interest-based earnings. You can take that money out and give it to National Zakat Foundation. They will discharge it in a halal, permissible way, but you do not intend in charity. You intend tawbah by doing that. So you have to completely give that away. There's no zakat on that, and your wealth has to meet the nisab, and 1 lunar year has to pass. Now, what's the question here? Let's see. How do you calculate your zakat? You look at your total zakat assets, your cash and everything we said, goods of sale, investments, you minus your deductibles. Deductibles meaning your debts that you have to pay now. So a bill that you have to pay, the CRA bill that you have to pay, you pay now, that you have to pay, you can deduct that. The bill that is going to come, next time for next year's income, no, you cannot. You cannot deduct that. It's not here yet. Once it's a liability on you, you can deduct it. And then you look at your net zakatable assets. Now, if those zakatable assets are above the nisab, 650 silver or 8,000 gold, then you pay 2.5% on the net zakatable assets, what's left over. So what does that mean? There's no example here. If I have $100,000 in zakatable assets and my deductibles, my debts are $50,000, how much am I left with? $50,000. Okay, so I only pay zakat on the 50,000. I don't pay it on the 100,000 originally. Right? Next thing, what about short-term debts? How do you minus your debts? So there's a difference. If it's a debt that's current debt, short-term, that means you have to pay it now. You can subtract up to 12 lunar months of payments. So I have an OSAP debt I have to pay. I know I'm going to pay a certain amount every month. I can subtract the principal that I have to pay for the next 12 months because that's what I expect in the lunar year to affect me. Now, if I have a long-term debt, let's say I'm still in university, I'm not even paying my debts right now. Can I deduct OSAP from that? No, you cannot, because you're not paying it now and it's long-term. So this is how you calculate that. If there's any questions, because we have to move through the material, so you can ask about that, right? And for example, a long-term debt, you only look at the 1 year's worth of payments. So even mortgage, same thing, right? You can, let's say your assets are 16,000 and you're paying 550 towards a long-term loan, 550 per month. But out of that 550, only 500 is principal, $50 is interest. You cannot subtract the interest because you're not supposed to be paying that. I know in the society you have to, but in Islam, you're not supposed to be engaging in the interest. So what do? 500 principal per month times 12 months, your deductible is $6,000. So now your 16,000 assets are minus from 6,000 1 year debt payments equals 10,000. Is that above nisab? It is. So therefore, times 2.5%, that's your zakat payable at $250. So same thing with the mortgages. Some scholars say that you can deduct up to 12 months of your mortgage payments from your assets. However, right, some say do not deduct your mortgage. Why? Because if people deducted their mortgages, there would be very few people left to pay zakat. I mean, think about this. If everybody paid, like, can you think about your payments that are due a year in advance? Do you have that much cash to outweigh it? Very few people do. People live month to month, generally speaking. So they say it's better not to do that, unless by paying zakat you fear you're not going to be able to pay your mortgage. And this is not looking at whether mortgage is halal or haram, or we're talking about you have a commitment, right? Whether it's halal or haram, you have a financial obligation. So in this case, a lot of scholars say don't deduct your mortgage. It's better, for the poor, you're only going to get more reward. Remember something, like wiggling out of zakat, you're just depriving yourself of rewards, right? So you may be technically eligible not to pay, but it's always best to pay if there's a difference of opinion. Okay. Now, the question becomes, how do you calculate your zakat anniversary? This is the biggest confusion people have, because they think, oh, 1 year has not passed. So I bought some goods for my business, but 1 year has not passed. In fact, only 5 days have passed. Do I have to wait 1 year on every single dollar? This dollar is at 6 months old. This dollar is 5 months old. This dollar is 12 months old. I'll pay on this. No. Here's how it works. The first day that you pass the nisab amount. So $650, technically, who remembers the first time they got $650? Asif, do you remember the first time in your life you got $650 and remember the exact day?
Of course. No, I'm kidding.
Nobody remembers that. So I actually go by the gold standard. When did you first get $8,000 clear of debts? A lot of people remember that because it's a milestone. For example, I'll tell you, in my case, I had student loans. So I remember the day that those student loans got wiped off, and all of a sudden I was I was out of the red and I was in the positive. So I remember that day that my zakat, so I looked at the date. It was the 29th of Jumada Thani, right? And I remember, okay, I'm going to call this my zakat date from now on. Now I put it in my iPhone, in my phone on the calendar. Every time the Jumada Thani comes up, and then I'm going to Jumada al-Ukhra, you can also call it, that date comes up. It could be a different solar date. So one day it's November 29th, next day it's October 26th, whatever it is, right? So you should start it on that day. But if you cannot remember what date that was, you can pick a date in the calendar. Now, zakat is not due necessarily in Ramadan. The only reason we're having these sessions in Ramadan is because people's hearts are willing to listen to what they have to do. So people are making tawbah, coming back to Allah. That's why zakat seminars are taking place in Ramadan. But otherwise, you don't have to set your date in Ramadan. In fact, it's better if you don't, to be honest. It's different if you owe. If you owe, pay now, pay today. You owe it, don't delay. But if you're like, I already paid my zakat, but I want to set a date, then you can set Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, 10th of Muharram. You can just set any Islamic date that you know you'll be able to keep track of. But if you have no other way and you're like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to keep track of Islamic dates, fine. Ramadan 1st, Ramadan 27th, you can do that. Last day of Ramadan, you can do that, okay? You can put it on your birthday, but it has to be on your lunar birthday, not on your solar birthday, right? So you try to estimate, right? You try to estimate. Yeah, so it's a really good way to understand if you know your lunar birthday. Now, what else are we saying? Yeah, so so basically, if you choose the 10th of Muharram, Ashura Day, as your anniversary, next Ashura Day, if you're above the nisab, you pay on all your wealth, 2.5%, minus your debts, right? Okay, any other questions about that zakat dates particularly?
Yeah, there was one about what do you call it? If you don't have a sense of exact time when you were eligible for zakat, can you estimate for that year?
Yeah,
Like,
it's okay. You just
you pick the best date possible, like you from the best of your understanding, and start with that. Is that generally the approach here?
Yeah. So basically, what you do is that you try to remember as well as you can. You try to remember. If you can't remember, then just set a date, and that becomes your zakat anniversary date. So if you forget your wedding anniversary, just pick a date. No, I'm just kidding. But you just pick that date, and that becomes your zakat anniversary. And every year now, it doesn't change. Every year you go back and you say, do I have more than nisab on this date? Yes, pay zakat. And then you start the year again. But if for some reason you do not hit the nisab on that date, then you wait to the next year to see if you hit the nisab. Then you don't pay zakat in that year. And if for some reason you go down to zero wealth, you lose everything, your zakat year starts again when you get the nisab. Okay. So let's talk about some test cases. Okay, because so zakat on shares and investments. If it's a short-term investment where you're going to hold the stock for less than a year, like day trading or something like that, then you pay zakat on the entire portfolio. If I invested 10,000 in Tesla, okay, and I know I'm just going to flip it, or you're probably not going to sell that, but if you just day trading, you pay on the entire portfolio. But if it's a long-term investment, and you like, what, I invested, and I'm staying here, let's say it's Tesla, and you're going from the beginning, you're going up, and you're waiting, then you do not pay zakat on the entire portfolio. You pay on the zakatable assets of that company, which is a bit more complex. How do you do that? You do the asset ratio formula. So the asset ratio, right, is basically what you're going to do, because not every company in their own wealth, in a company's wealth, they have machines, they have cash, the companies have cars. Because you're a partial owner of that company. So basically you have to pay your zakat on the zakatable assets of that company that you own, right? So with a share, you own just a sliver of a company. So basically, the zakatable asset ratio, right, is the total current assets over the market cap. Or if you're not sure what that is going to be, 0.3 times the current holding value in dollars. So if I invested 10,000, I'm going to times that by the zakatable asset ratio. And that's my portion of shares and wealth that I am going to calculate my 2.5% on. Okay, so unless there's a very specific question on this, you can look at the slide, you can do a screen capture, you can ask questions after, but I don't want to, unless someone has a very specific question, I will move on, okay? because it's hard to keep track of anyways the first time you say it. So it probably needs some walking through. But
Yeah,
this is how
and there are
but,
resources online as well. As well as you can book consultations if you have specific questions on specific portfolios and things like
but
that.
it's just to show you. It's just to show you. Now, zakat and RESP, because the RESP can be liquidated prior to the kid's education, right? Then zakat is, for the fund is zakatable. But you only pay zakat on the amount that you contributed, plus or minus the growth or losses. So what does that mean? Your RESP, the RESP contains $12,000, okay? And you contributed $10,000. The government contributed $2,000. Assuming there's no growth, then you only pay zakat on the amount that you contributed, $10,000, not on the entire 12. Okay. And if there's a penalty for early withdrawal, you can minus that. So if there's a $500 penalty for withdrawing the amount, then you can say, okay, in your mind, I'm going to minus the 500 from the 10,000 and pay 2.5% on that. Same on RRSPs. Because you can liquidate them, you take the total RRSP value and you minus the withholding penalty or tax, and whatever's left, you pay 2.5%. As long as the RRSP is self-directed, meaning I have control where it gets invested and I have access. If you don't have control and you don't have access, it's not done. Now, gold and silver jewelry. Okay? This is the debate that comes around every year, right? Number one opinion is that zakat is not paid on jewelry that is worn regularly, unless it's an excessive amount. Okay, so and some people say the earrings and the necklace that the lady wears, worn regularly, you don't pay zakat on that. But you have a gold set, expensive gold set, that is in the safety deposit box because after your wedding you just had no chance to wear it. No, you pay zakat on that. But the stuff that you're wearing all the time, no. The Hanafi school, however, says no. Zakat should be paid on all gold and silver jewelry, whether you're wearing it today or not. Why? Because at the end of the day, gold and silver represents intrinsic value. I can go to the jeweler and say, I want to sell this to you. And he'll melt it and take it. But you pay on the scrap value. You don't pay on retail value. There's also a difference of opinion. When it's gold, as long as it's majority gold, you pay the entire weight. But others say, no, you have to look at the carats, right? So if you have a 200-gram ring, and well, that would be a heavy ring. But let's say you have like a necklace of 200 grams, and it's only 75% gold. I think that's like probably 18 karat, if I'm not mistaken. Then you only pay 75% of that because 25% is mixed up with other metal. Okay, so you can choose to pay on the entire gold, or you can choose to go by the number of carats and the percentage of purity in that. Okay, but the NZF position is following on the Hanafi school on this one, in which just pay zakat on all of your jewelry. People don't usually wear that much anyways that it's going to be crazy, but somebody gets to have an extra meal. Why not? Why wouldn't you do it? And you get reward. You're never going to lose if you pay more. Okay, but you will lose if you don't pay what you're supposed to. Right?
Question for
Yeah.
question on the jewelry part. There's a question said my wife had some jewelry that she received on her wedding as a gift, but kept it in a bank locker. In 25 years, she has paid more than the actual zakat value. Probably, I'm thinking it means to hold it in the bank. Does she still pay zakat while she owns the jewelry?
Yeah. So actually, she has to go now into her back zakat, and she has to pay qada, payments of zakat as well. So since the day you got married, because that was yours, it was given to you, it was sitting there. Even if you didn't wear it a single day, even if you did not even look at it and you forgot about it, let's say you forgot about it, you have to go back and say, what was about valued? What was that valued? 2.5%, 2.5%, 2.5%, and you have to pay it all off. Because the reality is, that gold sitting in the safety deposit box was the meal of some hungry person on the street. They deserved at that time, and we forgot to pay it. So okay, maybe Allah forgives. Alhamdulillah. This is a time of tawbah as well. But you have to pay it out. Yes, you have to pay it out because the haqq of the poor is still on that.
Okay.
Even if you have to sell part of it, you have to do it.
Okay, and there was a little bit follow-up qualification on that. And then she paid more zakat collectively than the actual jewelry price 25 years ago. I don't know if that really.
You mean she? Yeah. If she paid more zakat value, but intention of zakat, you can't say, oh, I did sadaqah, so it should count for that. No. If you actually said, I'm intending to pay zakat, not on 10,000 of my wealth. Even if I had more, I'm intending to pay zakat $50,000. Then yes, it counts because it does. If you owed that zakat in the past, but it's not like, oh, but I already gave money for sadaqah, so it should cover the past amount. No, it has to be I'm intending zakat.
So
So then,
I
No,
think
I
so
think, yeah, sorry if I could just weigh in here.
yeah.
I think what the questioner is trying to say is that they have paid so much zakat on this gold for the last 25 years that all of that zakat collectively now is worth more than the actual value of the gold itself, right? So it's the gold is sitting there and it's being paid zakat on again and again and again and again over 25 years. If you now were to take the value of that gold, it's
yeah,
less than what they've already paid zakat on it for like last 25 years.
how could that happen to 2.5% of the value of? So you're saying because you paid 2.5%, that would take 40 years,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it wouldn't. Yeah, it wouldn't
Unless
add
the
up.
value is changing, the value of the
But
gold
but
is
gold
changing.
gold is going up. Gold
But
is
but but let's
going
assume
up.
that it's not more, that it is a significant value. So we would continue to pay zakat on
You
the
would
jewelry,
continue to
right?
pay, yeah, you would
Yeah.
continue to pay zakat. So let's say like you wanted to sell a car for $10,000, okay? Or let's say yeah, you want to sell a car for $1,000. So yeah, it is possible that the zakat you owe on it over and over and over will surpass the value of the car. It's possible, but it's also because you held on to the value of the car for all that time and you benefited from it. Technically, if you benefit or not, you still were able to potentially benefit from it, right? You could have sold it, you could have made a profit of it. And this is why, again, this is a very good question. Islam encourages to move your wealth, use it, produce it, get it going. When wealth is sitting inside a bank account or a vault, it doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the person, does not benefit the poor person or the owner. Move, invest, keep moving around. That's when it benefits people, right? Even same with inheritance. Do you notice like it keeps breaking up fortunes? You could have an empire and it breaks up every single generation. It breaks. Why? Because let's start again. Let's do it. Let's keep keep turning the wealth around. So it's not supposed to be something as Allah says in the Quran, it's not supposed to be something that just stays with the rich person. It's supposed to be circulating in society. So it may mean you have to liquidate it and get it out, but it's also because you held on to it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You want to
Okay.
go? There's a
Yep.
question on property, so if you cover this, I'll get to it.
Sure. What's the question?
Oh, the question is like I bought some plots of land in an underdeveloped area. The intention was to save for rainy days for family. These plots are not for sale, able due to no development. How can I calculate zakat on these plots of land as no sale value yet?
Yeah, but did you buy the land with intention to sell it? That's the question.
No, it seems like they bought the land oh yeah, I guess they did but as a savings, as in that you could liquidate in the future if you have a problem, like so it's like savings
Yeah, so
wealth, I
it's
guess.
not it's not that's not an item of sale. So if I just bought a plot of land just to like rent out. I bought it just for myself. I bought it to hold on to as an investment property. There's difference between I'm buying something to sell it. I'm trying to buy it to flip it. If that is the intention, then you pay on it. If I just bought land to hold on to, I'm just holding on to it. It's not on. It's not. I didn't buy it to put it on sale to flip it right away. Then I don't have to pay zakat on it. However, if it is in my intention, I know I bought it to sell it, then I will pay zakat, and you will pay on the market value of that, or sorry, the kind of, yeah, the value of that plot at that time. If you don't know what that value is, just look back at how much you bought it for. That'll tell you a lot if you don't know the value, right? Unless there's a, and then you could usually an appraisal will tell you how much it's worth, and that's why you actually invested into it. So let's say you invested $10,000 with the down payment with the builder, right? So that is still an investment that you can pay on, even though you have not. It's not the entire amount that you paid off. You still have a certain amount of that equity inside there, or you know that the value of your investment is this much. I'm not sure if that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's go on. So the properties, as we said, if you're renting out the property, you do not need to pay zakat on it. Rather, you pay zakat on the rent that you're getting in your pocket. That's where the zakat goes. It's only on properties that you bought in order to resell. Now, of course, you could avoid paying zakat by making the intention, okay, I'm just gonna buy it without the intention of reselling. But Allah knows your intention, if you're house flipper or not, right? Alhamdulillah. Now, retirement funds. Your RRIF, if someone has $500,000 after a lifetime of savings, retirement, technically speaking, you have to pay 2.5% on the entire $500,000 every year. But that becomes very difficult for a lot of people. So the alternative that NZF goes with is the amount that you're going to withdraw every year, 35,000, let's say, you pay zakat on the amount that you're going to withdraw every year. Even though it's true, you technically owe on the entire amount. But if you were to pay 2.5% on $500,000, $500,000, your zakat payment every year would be like a quarter of your income because you're just trying to extract income. So that's why they give the leeway that, okay, whatever you withdraw, you pay zakat on that. But of course, is it superior to pay on the entire amount? There's no doubt. Okay, and zakat on pensions. Your pension fund, I'm losing my voice here, so we'll just wrap up soon. The pension fund has to be accessible and controllable. You mean if you cannot withdraw the funds and use them anytime you want, even with a penalty, you don't have to pay zakat. And if you cannot control the fund, like my company's investing it in whatever they want, then you don't. It's only if you have control, if you exercise. So what does that mean? If it's locked and you don't have control, then you pay when it matures. When you actually get the money, then you pay. But if you have control and you have exercise, it's your wealth. So you have to pay it, even now, before it matures. And so, for example, DCPP, because it's inaccessible, you don't pay on it, right? And but it's controllable. So the zakat liability depends. If it's an equity fund, you take out the interest and you pay zakat on the amount. If it's a money market or low interest vehicle, then you only pay on your own contribution. If it's an LIRA, they are zakatable if the investment is controlled. If this doesn't mean anything to you, don't worry about it. But if it does, it might catch your ear. The CPP, because it's not controlled or not accessible, you do not pay zakat on your CPP. And how do you pay zakat for missed years? Right? Failure to pay zakat without a valid reason is disobedience. It's a sin. You'll be asked about it, right? And zakat can be made up through tawbah and then payment. So how do you do it? You identify the years that you miss payment. Sometimes people are not sure, but sometimes people know. Look, I know I have more money than $650 in excess. I'm going to pay zakat. Okay? So what you do, you identify the missed years. 1999, 2000, 2001, whatever. Then you say, what was the nisab of that year? And then you look at how much assets you estimate how much assets you had, and then you pay 2.5% minus your debts. However, if you just said, I have no idea what the nisab was that time, I have no idea what my assets were, you can just take an estimate. Look, in those times, I never used to have more than 8,000 in my account, anyways. Just pay 8,000 on that account, finish. In those days, I just had my jewelry and maybe 10,000 bucks. Just estimate and pay. If there's no way of checking, because some people can't go back to their bank accounts, right? And if you cannot liquidate it, then include it in your will if you missed it. And if you do not know the answer, book an appointment with one of our scholars, inshallah, who can go through a counseling session for missed zakat. But it's worth just getting on right now and just giving an amount and intending that zakat. If you're not sure, be safe and do it. Remember, on every 10,000, it's only $250 if you think about it. So it's not very much, right? Not much. Okay, Jazakallah khairan. And thank you so much for your patience in the month of Ramadan. If there are any questions, let's take them out now.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Okay, just a couple more questions here. I am holding a company stock long-term, 5 years in my RRSP or RESP. Is the company asset? Do I use this company asset calculation? I believe if they're asking, would they pay zakat
Yes.
on this?
Yes. If it is in the form of a stock that you own and that you can control and that you can access, and it is a stock or an investment, then you will, and it's a long-term one, then, that's a good question, but it's through your RRSP. That's what they're saying?
Yes, through RRSP or RESP. Yes.
Yeah, do you calculate it according to a long-term stock, or do you calculate it according to RRSP? I mean, the position NZF is taking on this webinar is that you're calculating RRSP according to the RRSP and not according to a stock. So obviously RRSPs, they take it and they invest it in something. right? So as far as I understand, NZF position is that you're going according to RRSP rulings. You're not looking at market cap and all this stuff because you're not directly investing in that company. It's just RRSP is doing it on your behalf, and that wealth is the gains are coming back to you. So Allah knows best. If there's a detailed question, you can book an appointment for that one. Somebody asked as well, can you pay zakat with a credit card? Yes, you can, because it's still a debt. You're taking that money and you're borrowing it and you're paying it, so you can do that. Can you?
Yeah.
Huh?
No, keep going. Yeah.
Can you get? Is it permissible to get a tax receipt for your investment, for your donation? That's another myth, by the way, we can talk about. Can you pay zakat with a credit card? Yes. Can you get a tax receipt? Yes, you can. Why? You're not getting your donation back, but the money that the government is stealing from you and sending to Ukraine and Israel, you're taking that back. So you have to imagine it like that. It's perfectly fine because they took your income tax. They took your income, so you're just getting a portion of that back. So there's nothing wrong with taking a tax receipt for your donations. Other questions? Sorry, my voice is getting.
No, I think we're almost done here. Once I calculated the zakat amount, do I have to wait 1 lunar year to start paying it? For example, today's calculation is payable March 2025.
If you owe zakat now, you pay now. But because you're saying you were eligible 1 year ago. So if you only became eligible today, you only crossed above 650, above 8,000 today, then you start the year today. You get it? The lunar
Right.
year.
So
But
when I
if you know,
calculate today, yeah.
I've always had to pay zakat. Like I've been 1 year ago, I had that much money. I know I did, and most people do have above $650 or above $8,000, And so that's why, you don't wait now. I calculate zakat for this year. No, you pay now. And you make this your, if you don't know, make this your date, like right now, what's the date today? It is 20th of Ramadan. Subhanallah. If you don't know, but you're sure that you owe zakat, make it today. Say, this is the NZF webinar that opened my eyes. Allah showed me what zakat was. 20th of Ramadan every year, I'm paying. When the last 10 nights comes, I'm paying my zakat, for example. All right?
And there's one question, I don't know exactly what they're asking. Can we buy a ration to someone from zakat
Yes.
money? I'm not.
Yes. So you can buy like a food ticket or a food stamp.
Okay.
And give it in kind. You can pay zakat as grains, as rice. But which one is most beneficial to the poor is cash. Because these days, I mean, in the older days, you paid zakat through, if somebody gives somebody a goat in our time, what are they going to do? If you give somebody a bag of rice, they'll say, thank you, but I have rent. So cash is best. But for example, there may be a case, for example, NZF may give people grocery vouchers as zakat just to make sure it's being channeled in that way. You can do that.
I believe that's all the questions we had in the chat as well as in the Q&A section. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us here today. I want to thank Sheikh Abdullah Misra for talking for such a long time during the fast, and I hope you can take a quick break now. So all the information, inshallah, including the recording of today's session, will be sent to everyone who registered for the call alongside the actual the slide deck as well. We'll put that as a PDF and we'll send that over to everyone. So please watch out in your email. If you did register, that's why you're here. You will get an email with all of those details and the links that you need to get all information, even if you think of it after the webinar, inshallah. So with that, we'll end. Sheikh Abdullah, if you want to just give a quick closing dua and then we can wrap it up. Jazakumullah khairan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما اللهم تقبل صيامنا وقيامنا وزكاتنا وصدقاتنا وقراءتنا وأذكارنا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم آمين. Thank you very much. جزاك الله خيرا.
Jazakumullah khairan, everyone. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.